What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Connor Speed6. We are on Forza Motorsport today, driving around Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit, and I am in the Corvette C8 GT or Forza GT car. What we're going to do today is take a look at my steering wheel setup using the Logitech G920. These settings should basically be plug and play or interchangeable with the G920, G29, and the all-new G923. Now, just a reminder, my preferences on the way my wheel feels might be a little bit different than the way you prefer to have yours set up, of course. So just remember that when going into this video and make your adjustments according to the way you like the wheel to feel. I've been practicing pretty hard using my steering wheel instead of a controller over the past 2 or 3 weeks, and I have to say I'm a lot faster using the steering wheel now than I am in comparison to the controller. About 1 second to 2 seconds faster per lap, just because I feel like it's so much smoother using the steering wheel rather than having to joystick joust on steering and things like that using the controller. Now, the only difficulty, of course, when it comes to the steering wheel is handling the snap oversteer and things like that in this game. I do have a pretty good setup to handle that and mitigate some of that for you. So let's jump into that right now and have a look at my settings for the Logitech G920, G29, and G23. Let's go. Okay, so first things first, you're going to go into the pause menu, drop down to settings, and then you're simply going to bumper over. You can adjust your controller, your advanced controller, all of that right here, and keyboard. Now, we're not going to touch anything on the basic wheel setup today because that's to each their own. If you want to set yours up a particular way, map yours a particular way to your liking, feel free to do that. One thing I do have to say, in some of my past videos for different games, F1, 23, and 22, etc., I was recommending to map your brake to your clutch. I do not recommend doing that in Forza Motorsport for a couple reasons. Number one, with the lower class cars that have H-pattern shifters, if you have an H-pattern shifter, you're going to need your clutch, of course. Plus, I have my brake pedal set up pretty much on this game perfectly, where you're not going to struggle locking up unless, of course, you completely depress your brake pedal and smash it to the floor all the time. Then that's on you. You've got to work on, of course, depressing gently and maybe doing some feathering of the brakes. So jumping into advanced wheel, this is my setup here. We're going to go down one by one really quickly. The steering axis dead zone inside and outside. I have my inside set to 1 because I like a little bit of play before it actually registers me turning in a little bit, just to make sure I don't just turn in too quickly, cause some snap oversteer, etc. on braking. My outside dead zone I have set to 80. The reason I have it set pretty high, I like to have less sensitivity on the smaller steering movements, but a little bit more sensitivity when I'm going closer to full lock. That's going to do a couple things for you. That's going to allow you to accelerate out of corners and through corners a lot smoother using the wheel. So as you turn your wheel more and more, it is going to be a little bit more sensitive as you get a little bit closer to full lock. That's going to give you much smoother steering through the corner and better acceleration to mitigate the snap oversteer when accelerating out of a corner. Again, that does coincide with feathering the throttle and being smooth on the throttle on acceleration. Now, dropping down to the acceleration dead zone inside and outside. I do have a little bit of a dead zone on the acceleration inside because I'm a foot rester. So unfortunately, whenever I'm braking and turning through a corner, at times my foot does tend to press the accelerator a little bit. And as you know, that will cause a ton of understeer through a corner. You really have to focus on maintaining, leaving your foot off of the accelerator all the way. That way you have no push from the car going through the corner. Acceleration axis outside, I have that set to 95 again, so it's less sensitive on the initial push, but more sensitive as you get closer to full press on the accelerator. Again, that mitigates some of that snap oversteer on acceleration and just spinning tires. Deceleration axis inside and outside. Now for braking, I have 0 dead zone at all on the inside, but then on the outside, I have that set all the way to 95. You could really go to 100 on here. It doesn't really hurt. That's going to give you more pedal play whenever you depress the brake before you're going to get to full lock. So less sensitivity at the beginning of the press, and it gets more sensitive as you get closer to the full depress. So again, it does take some practice on getting used to the feel and your full lock position on the brake pedal, or full depress position on the brake pedal, because the last thing you want to do is lock up. Unless you're running ABS, then that's up to you. I don't run ABS because I feel like I can brake a lot smoother and quicker without ABS on. Clutch dead zone inside and outside. I left this the way it is because it really doesn't matter. You're really just slamming the clutch down, shifting gears, of course, if you've got an H pattern. So I didn't adjust any of this at all. If you are a foot rester, again, you may want to give a little bit of a dead zone inside so you can account for your foot possibly resting on that clutch, because you don't want to accidentally engage the clutch when you're on a straight and be revving, of course, or rev banging, sitting in neutral when you're in 6th gear going 180 miles per hour, for example. So you may want to leave a little bit of a dead zone if you're a foot rester. If you're not, leave that at 0, leave it at 50 in the outside dead zone, and you should be okay. Handbrake, I don't have a handbrake, so I just use the B button, which unfortunately the handbrake taps of the E-brake is still a little bit meta in Forza Motorsport. Going around super tight hairpins, you can tap that E-brake, rotate the back end around, accelerate out, especially with front wheel drive cars. So it's a little bit meta, but again, unnecessary to change here for me personally. Just remember, if you do have a handbrake and you are going to adjust the outside dead zone, the higher the number, the less sensitive it's going to be at first pull, more sensitive it's going to be at full pull. All right, so let's jump down here to, we'll say, the second page of the advanced wheel settings. My vibration scale, I left at 50. I don't really like to have a super powerful vibration because the G920, unfortunately, is very chattery. It gets annoying after a while, especially recording and streaming. Force feedback scale, I have this set to 100. It gives me a good amount of feedback and makes the wheel feel a little bit heavier, which I do like. So I have mine set to 100 personally. That gives a really good feedback from the wheel to the hands, and it kind of makes you feel like you're immersed in the car a little bit more. The steering self-alignment, think of this as when you start to counter steer the car. So if you're turning a corner right, the car back end snaps out, you have to counter steer really quickly. This is the setting that you can adjust to have the wheel snap back to center faster, harder, or lighter. It's up to you. For me personally, I like to have a good amount of self-aligning torque here. So I've got 120 set up for mine so it can bring it back to center a little bit quicker than normal. These two things are very, very important. I think this is about right for the G920. I know some other videos such as Hoki Hoshi has his set to 80 and 110. For me on the Logitech G920, I've got the mechanical trail set to 80, the pneumatic trail set to 145. These two things are going to make big adjustments to the way the wheel feels whenever you feel the back end of the car start sliding out. So whenever you start to lose grip from the road and the tire, it's going to give a pretty good feel on the wheel. It could be a little bit difficult to get used to this when you're first learning the steering wheel in this game. So I've got my new mechanical set to 80, pneumatic set to 145. That's just my preference on this. Some people may want a little bit lower on pneumatic, but I think for the G920 at least, and G29, G923, 80 and 145 is pretty much the way to go on these two options here. Road feel scale, I like to have a good amount of road feel, but with these, the mechanical and pneumatic trail set to where they are, you don't really need too much more. So I've got the road feel scale set to 65. It's just how the road feels under the car. If you hit a bump, you know how much of the herky-jerky you're going to feel through the steering wheel into your arms. Now on load sensitivity, this is basically adjusting how it feels whenever your tire hits any type of bump or hits any type of curb in relation to, for example, turning and hitting a curb. It adjusts the sensitivity to where how much that curb makes an adjustment to the input of your steering wheel. So if you're hitting a curb, turning into a corner, it might kick the steering wheel back a little bit. I like it pretty much right in the middle. I don't want too much. I don't want none at all, of course. So pretty much right in the middle as the game sets up to begin with is really where I like it. I did adjust a few times and then just came back to 50 because I didn't really like one way or the other personally. I did like it pretty much set right in the middle. Wheel damping scale. This is going to pretty much just adjust how heavy the wheel feels in a sense. So I like mine set to 30. People who like a much heavier feel can raise this up a little bit. I wouldn't recommend going super far right or super far left, of course, with anything in life, let's be real. But 30 was a pretty good feel for me on the G920 personally. Center spring scale. This is another one of those things that sort of go hand in hand with the steering self-alignment. The center spring scale, it's basically, again, how hard or how fast the wheel centers when the car is counter steering or you need to counter steer or losing grip, etc. when the wheels in the game automatically turn the opposite direction. It's just how hard you're going to have it pull that wheel or your steering wheel back to center I have mine set to 110. Again, I like a little bit of a heavier pull back to center because it sort of helps me correct the car in a timely fashion, because we all know it's super easy using the steering wheel in these games to lose the back end of the car. I do it myself as well. It's a very difficult thing to keep the cars from just simply backing into corners or backing out of corners and spinning out into a wall. Now, the dynamic damping behavior, I have this set a little bit higher because I would rather have less feel whenever I'm just cruising in a straight line, but more feel whenever I go around a corner and the dampers really start moving or go over bumps. That way I can have a little bit more realistic feeling and input back into the steering wheel to correct the car. Again, whenever I'm going over a curb, hitting a curb or something like that, to where if the car starts to go a little bit, I can sort of quickly counter steer that to get it back straight. I have mine set to 85. Couldn't hurt to drop down a little bit more. I wouldn't go too much higher than 85 because it could get a little bit herky-jerky whenever you're hitting bumps and curbs and things like that might throw you off. Okay, so the steering sensitivity, I don't like mine to be, again, super sensitive. As you can see back up at the top with the steering dead zone outside, I like to have more sensitivity at full lock, less sensitivity at the first signs of a corner. Because a lot of times we can just go like this into a corner too much, and if your steering is way too sensitive, you're going to, again, back into a corner, and that's not what you want at all. You want it smooth in, smooth through, smooth out. Having less sensitivity on the steering wheel is probably key for that, especially in these games that could bridge that gap from sim to simcade or arcade. With a controller, again, you have to be tapping a lot. So this is going to allow you to be more smooth through a corner when shifting, downshifting, accelerating, etc. Sometimes less is more when it comes to the steering sensitivity. Okay, and the steering linearity, again, going back to more of a sensitivity at a full lock. The lower the number provides less sensitivity when you're, we'll say from 12 to 9 and 12 to 3, and more sensitivity from 3 to 6, of course, and 9 to 6, going the opposite direction. Because again, if your steering wheel is too sensitive, you will back into corners. You will lose a lot of grip on deceleration, especially when you get that first flick into a corner. So again, less sensitivity near center lock, more sensitivity towards full lock. So that's it. Those are my settings for the Logitech G920. Again, you can screenshot these if you'd like to. Try them on your setup. Make little tweaks here and there based on the way you prefer to have your wheel set up. But I think these are overall a pretty good wheel setup for the Logitech G920. So there you have it, everyone. Those are my Logitech G920, G29, and G923 wheel settings in Forza Motorsport. I really hope these help you out and help you become a faster racer in Forza. I know we can all use to be a little bit faster because there are some aliens out there who are just immensely faster than everybody when you get into a lobby. It's really not fair, but it is what it is. But yeah, I think, again, the steering wheel is the way to go. So if you have the option for a steering wheel in Forza Motorsport, I would certainly recommend it, especially the Logitech line. The G923 is a great budget wheel, or G920 in my instance. And it's going to get you some really good lap times and make you, or help you be, more competitive in online racing, in my opinion. It certainly has for me. The controller is just a little bit boring at this point. You know what I mean? I just needed a little bit more of a challenge for the new game and the new platform and the new multiplayer system. I am using a Forza GT car, which is the Corvette. I don't have traction control on. A lot of people, most people, run traction control when they're racing in Forza GT lobbies. So that might be something you want to try out as well, because without traction control, when you get on the accelerator, you can definitely kick up a little bit and spin around. Yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you did, please be sure to leave a like and a positive comment down below. Do me a massive favor as well. If you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe. We are almost at 10,000 subscribers, and I would love for you to be a part of the Speed Squad. I would really, really appreciate it. That's going to do it for me today, guys. As always, I have been Connor Speed 6. Until next time, much love, everyone. I'll see you soon.